Hello there. We should be going live in just a couple of seconds. Today we're on chapter 11 of My Life with the Spirits. A damn good book. If you don't have a copy of My Life with the Spirits, of course you can borrow one from a neighbor. Wipe it down. Anyway, I hope you're ready. Hope you're well and cozy and settled in with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or something hot and warm. And today we're going to read 11, which is called My Father's Ghost. It's a relatively short chapter today, so we'll be able to get on with our day. Anyway, I'm going to take the phone off the hook. It might go beep, 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 so don't let that bother you. So, anyway, we're making our way through. Believe it or not, if you're not familiar with My Life with the Spirits, the first section of the book is a great deal of autobiographical material, and I sort of explain why in the earlier chapters why I'm doing that. But now we're starting to get into more magical things. I've joined the Rosicrucian Order Amorc, and I'm now getting into the world of magic. So if you've been impatient to have us get into the magical stuff, it's coming right up. But first, chapter 11, My Father's Ghost. Most everyone would agree that objective reality is a world where living things are just that, living things, such as people or dogs or cats or elephants. Furthermore, symbols are not alive, but they're abstract representations of ideas. It's been my experience, however, that the opposite is true on the magical plane. Symbols are alive, and living things are generally symbols of something. When I see an angel or a magical beast in a dream or a vision or a scrying session, it's usually a symbolic encounter with a concept concerning a personal or magical issue that's too complex to be expressed or understood through any other medium. These same living apparitions react to symbols as if they were alive. A simple geometric figure, such as a cross or a pentagram, drawn in the air in the face of a pesky spirit, is often enough to send it fleeing in terror. This basic rule of thumb unravels when one is faced in a dream or vision with the living image of a dead person. Is it alive, or is it a symbol? Almost everyone who's ever lost a loved one has at least one visitation story to tell. Usually the deceased appears in a vivid dream or vision a week or two after dying and delivers a message to the effect that everything is okay and not to worry. I used to think that this phenomenon was a natural denial mechanism of the mind, triggered at times when it's easier to accept an hallucination rather than dealing with grief and the great mystery of death. 24. My father died of emphysema a few weeks after seeing Jean-Paul take his first steps. He was only 61. About 10 days after his funeral, he showed up to deliver a curious message. Since my initiation into Amorc, I had set aside an hour or two each Thursday night to study the monographs and practice the various outline psychic exercises. For some reason, I decided this night I would perform my devotions before dinner and set up my sanctum altar in the bedroom. I opened the temple with the usual ceremonial formalities, unsealed my new monograph, and started to read. Almost immediately, I found that I could not keep my mind focused on the words. I found myself reading the same sentence over and over and over again until I became extremely sleepy. I finally gave up trying to read altogether and decided to take a little nap before dinner and pick up my studies later. I blew out both candles. The little Rosicrucian altar has you set up 2 candles with a mirror in the center, and you sit down in front of that. They call it a telesterion. And so I blew out both of those candles. I blew out both candles and stretched out in the cool darkness. In those days, it was my habit when sleeping on my back to cross my arms over my breast. I closed my eyes and was instantly out. Suddenly, I became conscious that the room was no longer dark. I remember thinking that I had broken the very first safety rule of fledgling mystics and allowed myself to fall asleep with candles burning. I opened my eyes and looked up to the ceiling. I could see every detail, bathed in a warm orange light. Then I noticed that my arms were no longer crossed over my chest, but stretched out crucifixion style. That struck me as being very curious because I knew I hadn't been asleep long enough to change positions. The pit of my stomach tingled with the joyous thrill I always feel when I dream I'm flying. But I wasn't flying. I was flat on my back on the bed. I turned my head to the left and looked down my arm to see my hand dangling over the mattress. Then I turned to the right, and to my utter delight, discovered my father sitting by the bed not 6 inches away from my right hand. He looked great. Better, in fact, than I had seen him in years. I felt younger just looking at him. His skin was a beautiful tan, and his hair was thicker and darker than I ever remembered. He didn't say a word, and for some reason I wasn't inclined to speak either. We just looked at each other. I soon became conscious of the peculiarity of the moment. The light in the room did not come from candles or electric lights. Every object in the room, most especially from Dad and me. There was a tangible silence in the room, as if the whole world was holding its breath. I had the feeling that if anything were to move, it would do so in blissfully slow motion. Finally, it dawned on me. I was sleeping. Dad was dead. And all this was very weird indeed. I had the presence of mind to realize that the thrill in my stomach was symptomatic of astral projection, and that the whole experience might not be a dream at all, but a fight case of psychic contact with the dead. To test my theory, I willed myself to float slowly up to the ceiling and down again. I did it with ease. I looked over at Dad and smiled, and he seemed amused but a little impatient. Then, with deliberation, he lifted his right hand. He wore a beautiful golden ring with a blue stone setting. The stone was embellished with the Masonic square and compass. However, on closer examination, I saw that superimposed upon the square was a downward pointing triangle surmounted by an ankh, very similar to the Amorc device. "Is this your message?" I asked mentally. He smiled and pointed to the ring. I had no idea what this meant. He delivered the wordless message with such drama and grace that for the time being, I didn't care what it meant. It was just a beautiful, pleasant moment. I choked up a little, like I do when I almost cry at the movies. I closed my eyes just for an instant to control the tears. I took a deep breath and then opened my eyes. The room was dark. My arms were folded over my chest. My father was gone. A week or so later, Constance and I visited Vina, my father's sister in Long Beach. I mentioned to her that I was studying the Amorc monographs, and she said, "In that case, I have something for you." She went to her bookcase and plucked several very old Amorc books and some bound monographs from the 1930s. "I took the lessons for about 5 years," she said as she handed me the books. "You're welcome to these old monographs too. Your father tried to join when he was 17 or 18, but in those days you had to be 21 years old to join the Rosicrucians." He was heartbroken. He was so thrilled when the Masons accepted him about the time you were born. This little tidbit of family history did not exactly explain my father's visitation. But at the same time, it served to encourage me concerning the direction my spiritual life was heading. However, in the years to follow, when the mysteries of Rosicrucianism and esoteric Freemasonry would become the centerpiece of my magical life, I'd come to understand that the message of my father's ghost was uncannily prophetic. That's the end of chapter 11 of My Life with the Spirits. I hope to see you all tomorrow, because the next chapter is on initiation. Be good to yourself. Be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will. Be safe.